The Galactic Alliance Refugee Station 17 floated in the cold emptiness between star systems. It was not a beautiful place. The metal walls showed rust in places. The air recyclers made a constant humming noise that never stopped. But for the thousands of beings who had lost their worlds, it was safety. It was survival. Dr. Sarah Chen had worked at the station for 3 years. She was not a soldier. She was not a diplomat. She was a nutritionist, which meant she spent her days figuring out how to feed beings whose bodies worked in ways completely different from humans. Some species needed sulfur in their food. Others would die if they ate anything containing iron. Sarah had learned to read the biological reports and create meal plans that kept everyone alive. It was not glamorous work. Most days, nobody thanked her. Most days, she sat alone in her small office, surrounded by data tablets and chemical analysis reports. She liked it that way. She had come to space to escape the noise of Earth, the constant pressure of family expectations, the feeling that she never quite fit anywhere. Here, among aliens who found all humans equally strange, she felt a kind of peace. The trouble started on a Tuesday, though in space all days felt the same. Station Commander Vrel called her to his office. Vrel was a Corvian, which meant he looked something like a 7-foot-tall praying mantis with too many eyes. Sarah had learned not to flinch when those eyes all focused on her at once. "We have a situation," Vrel said. His translator box turned his clicking sounds into flat English words. "The Varun refugees." Sarah nodded. She knew about them. The Varun were a mammalian species, covered in soft gray fur. They had 4 arms and faces that humans found oddly cute, like a mix between a cat and a fox. Their planet had been destroyed by the harvester swarm 3 months ago. Only about 2,000 had escaped. Most of them were children. "The cubs are not eating," Vrel continued. "They have been here for 6 days. Our medical staff says they will begin to show serious health problems within another week if this continues." "What about the adult Varun? Can't they help?" Those many eyes blinked in a pattern Sarah had learned meant sadness. "There are only 47 adults among 800 cubs. Most parents did not survive the evacuation. The adults are overwhelmed. They try to feed the little ones, but the cubs refuse." Sarah frowned. "Is there something wrong with the food? I designed those meal plans myself based on the biological data we received." "The food is correct. Our doctors have confirmed this. The problem is psychological, not physical." Sarah understood then. These children had watched their world burn. They had lost their parents, their homes, everything they knew. Of course they did not want to eat. Grief had stolen their hunger. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. "I'm not a counselor." "No," Vrel agreed, "but you are the one who makes the food. Perhaps you can find a way to make them want it." Sarah wanted to say no. She wanted to explain that she worked with data and chemicals, not with traumatized children, but she looked at Vrel's many eyes and saw something she had not expected to see in an alien face: desperation. Even the commander of a refugee station could feel helpless sometimes. "I'll try," she said. The Varun section of the station had been converted from an old cargo bay. Temporary walls divided the space into sleeping areas, and the lighting had been adjusted to match the orange-gold quality of their destroyed sun. It was a kind gesture, Sarah thought, but it probably just reminded them of what they had lost. She found the mess hall for the Varun section easily. It was loud with the sound of crying and whimpering. Hundreds of small, furry bodies sat at long tables, and in front of each one sat a bowl of food. The bowls were all full. None of the cubs were eating. The adult Varun moved between the tables, speaking softly in their own language, trying to coax the children. Some of the adults were crying too. Sarah stood in the doorway and felt completely useless. Then she noticed one table in the corner. 5 cubs sat there, smaller than the others. They huddled close together and their fur was matted and dull. The sign of malnutrition, Sarah recognized. These 5 were in worse shape than the rest. She walked over to them. They looked up at her with huge golden eyes. Varun eyes were designed for dim light, so they seemed almost too big for their faces. Like cartoon characters, Sarah thought, like something designed to make you feel protective. "Hello?" she said. She knew they probably did not understand English, but she hoped her tone would communicate something. "My name is Sarah." The cubs stared at her. One of them, the smallest, made a sound that the translator did not catch, probably too quiet. Sarah looked at their bowls. The food was a kind of warm porridge made from proteins and nutrients that matched Varun biology. It was beige and boring looking. She had designed it to be efficient, not appealing. On impulse, she sat down at the table with them. There was not really room, but she squeezed onto the bench anyway. The cubs shifted away from her slightly, but they did not run. "I know you're not hungry," Sarah said. "I know everything is scary and wrong, but you need to eat something, just a little bit." They did not respond. Sarah sat there feeling foolish. What was she doing? She could not speak their language. She had no training in trauma care. She was just a nutritionist who spent too much time alone. But she did not leave. Something told her to stay, so she stayed. After about 10 minutes, the smallest cub moved. It reached out with one of its 4 small hands and touched Sarah's arm. Its fur was so soft. Then it picked up its spoon and took one tiny bite of porridge. Sarah held her breath. She did not move. She did not want to scare the cub. Another cub ate a bite, then another. Within a few minutes, all 5 of them were eating slowly, carefully, while staying pressed close to Sarah's side. An adult Varun approached the table. Sarah looked up and saw tears running down the alien's furred face. The translator caught the words this time. "They eat," the adult said. "For the first time since we arrived, they eat." Sarah did not know what to say. She just stayed where she was until all 5 bowls were empty. Word spread quickly through the station. The human nutritionist had gotten the 5 worst cases to eat. Nobody knew exactly how or why. The Varun adults asked Sarah to come back the next day, and she did. This time, more cubs wanted to sit near her. By the 3rd day, she needed a bigger table. Station Commander Vrel called her to his office again. "What are you doing?" he asked. It was not an accusation. He seemed genuinely curious. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I just sit with them. I don't even talk much. I just stay there while they eat." Vrel's many eyes studied her. The Varun psychological experts have a theory. They say that Varun cubs have a strong pack bonding instinct. In normal circumstances, they would never eat unless surrounded by their family group. The presence of trusted adults signals safety. "But I'm not Varun. I'm not even close." "No. But you are consistent. You come every day. You sit with them. You do not demand anything from them. You do not cry or show distress. To traumatized cubs who have lost all sense of safety, you represent something stable." Sarah thought about this. She thought about her own childhood, the chaotic household, the parents who were always too busy for her. She thought about how she had learned to feed herself, to find her own stability in routines and quiet spaces. "I understand them," she said quietly. "Not because I'm special, because I know what it's like to feel alone at the table." Over the following weeks, Sarah's role at the station changed. She still did her nutritionist work, but she also spent 4 hours every day in the Varun mess hall. The cubs fought for spots near her. The adults started calling her the keeper of the table, which the translator rendered in a way that sounded almost religious. She learned their names. The smallest cub who had first touched her arm was called Teak. Teak followed her everywhere he was allowed to go. He learned some English words. His favorite was stay. "You stay?" he would ask every time Sarah got up to leave. "I'll come back tomorrow," she always said. And she always did. The other species on the station began to notice. A group of Corvian scientists asked to observe her interactions. A diplomatic team from the Falari Consortium requested a meeting to discuss human bonding behaviors. Apparently, what Sarah was doing was considered remarkable among species that did not share food or eating spaces with their young. Sarah hated the attention. She tried to explain that she was not doing anything special. She was just sitting with children while they ate. Any decent person would do the same. But Commander Vrel pointed out that none of the other station personnel had thought to try it. The professional counselors had attempted structured therapeutic sessions. The medical staff had considered force-feeding through tubes. The other humans on station had felt too awkward to interact with alien children. Only Sarah had simply sat down and stayed. "Perhaps that is what makes humans valuable to the Alliance," Vrel said. "You do not calculate the worth of your actions. You simply act according to your feelings." "That doesn't sound like a compliment," Sarah said. "It is an observation. Among Corvians, we would never behave so irrationally. But Corvian children do not bond with strangers. Varun children, it seems, can. And you were the one irrational enough to discover this." 6 months later, the Varun were preparing to leave Station 17. A new colony world had been found for them. Ships were coming to transport them to their new home. Sarah stood in the mess hall on the last morning. It was full of cubs eating breakfast, but the mood was different, excited, hopeful. They were going to a real planet, with sky and ground and sun. Teak sat beside her as he always did. He was bigger now, healthier. His fur was shiny and thick. He had learned enough English to hold simple conversations. "You come with us?" he asked. Sarah had thought about this. She had thought about it every night for weeks. Her contract with the station was ending anyway. She had no particular reason to return to Earth, and she had grown to love these children. These small, furry beings who had taught her that sometimes the best thing you can do is just stay. But she shook her head. "I can't, Teak. There will be other refugees, other cubs who need someone to sit with them." Teak's golden eyes went wet with tears. "Then you stay here alone." "I won't be alone. I'll have new friends to make, and you'll have a whole planet full of Varun. You won't need a human anymore." Teak wrapped all 4 of his arms around her. "Always need you," he said. "You teach us that eating is safe. You teach us that strangers can be family." Sarah held him for a long time. After the Varun left, the mess hall felt empty. Sarah went back to her regular work, designing meal plans for whatever species arrived next. The station crew took down the temporary walls in the Varun section and converted it back to cargo storage. But Commander Vrel made one small change. In every mess hall on the station, regardless of which species it served, one chair was marked with a small sign in multiple languages. The translation was roughly the same in all of them. "Reserved for the human who stays." At first, Sarah was embarrassed, but then the next group of refugees arrived. They were Kellics, a reptilian species whose children had lost their parents to a plague. The cubs were scared and confused, and they refused to eat. Sarah sat in her reserved chair. The Kellics cubs looked at her with their sideways blinking eyes. "I know you're not hungry," she said. "I know everything is scary. But I'm going to sit here with you until you feel safe enough to try." It took 3 days that time, but eventually one brave cub picked up its food and took a bite. Then another, then another. Word spread through the galaxy eventually. The human nutritionist at Station 17 who could get any species' children to eat. Xenobiologists wrote papers about it. Diplomats discussed its implications for human integration into galactic society. Some called it a special ability. Some called it luck. Sarah called it something else. She called it showing up. She called it staying when it would be easier to leave. She called it remembering that everyone, no matter what planet they come from, wants to feel safe enough to eat. The chair stayed reserved. Sarah stayed at the station. And every day, no matter what species sat at the tables around her, she did the only thing she knew how to do. She stayed. Years later, when Sarah was old and gray and had helped raise thousands of refugee children from dozens of species, she received a message. It was from Teak. He was grown now, with cubs of his own, living on the Varun colony world. "My children would not eat today," Teak wrote. "So I sat with them. I stayed until they felt safe. I learned this from you. My children will learn it from me, and their children will learn it from them. You taught us that food is not just nutrients. Food is love made physical, and love means staying." Sarah read the message 3 times. Then she went to the mess hall, sat in her reserved chair, and waited for whoever needed her next. Some humans changed the galaxy with weapons. Some changed it with inventions or discoveries. Sarah changed it with a simple act that no one else had thought to try. She sat with children while they ate, and she never left until every bowl was empty.